Good Thursday to you, everybody, in COM 813. Yoink. Welcome to week boom, bam, 12 and boom, bam, 13. How's everybody doing? I just got to get my, if not my head, my hat on straight. There. Much better. You know what we need here, what we haven't had. Uh, hmm, Much better. It's tea by this time of the evening, not coffee. Simply too late. But who remembers Smokey the Bear? Huh? Mm. Okay. Good Thursday to you, everyone. Um, all right. So last week there was no video. All right. I was away at a conference in Arizona. It went very nicely. If you're asking, still looking for my hat to be on straight, it's one of those end of the hair days. So long day at work today. But I'm back now. Okay. Still not right. There. That's better. That's passable at least. To talk about last week and this week and then forward, because week 13, we're winding down the semester. And just kind of an FYI, a heads up to you. I'm really only going to ask by way of reading and response from you up through week 14. You're not going to have readings. Well, okay. You're going to have very small readings during the 15th. And then during week 16, the last week, I won't give you anything. So this next week, and then a little bit into the week after that, we're done by way of the regular nominal stuff. What in the world is going on with my hat? I'll tell you what it is. I don't have the Regent hat. I don't have the official merch. This is an old outdoor research hat that I don't wear so much anymore. But anyway, so here's what I would like you to focus on between now and the end of the class. And there are a couple of important points that I have for you. Number one, it is imperative that you finish your papers on time. All right. I have extremely limited bandwidth during that last week. I have an event that I'll need to be attending overseas. And I just don't have a lot of room for late final papers. So make sure that you have them in by the 8th of November. All right. Now, someone, I won't say who, emailed me and said, hey, is there a rubric for paper number 2? Yes, there is. In fact, it's in the assignment folder, assignments. If you go in there, not only is there a rubric for part 2 of paper. Remember, this is one paper, so part 2 is really the completion of the full paper. But there's a link to which you upload the final paper. And remember what we're doing here, since writing is rewriting. If you follow the feedback that I gave you in part 1, still not happy with my hat. That's doofy. Maybe it's the camera. You follow the feedback that I gave you in part 1. Most importantly, do certain things, don't do certain things. All right. And you improve by way of your score on the final paper. I give you the higher score. And, now to cue you in as to how that works, I think, look at that. That is a catastrophe. I think about when I'm evaluating papers, I think about grades in terms of percentage. Just, old habits die hard. So I think, yeah, okay. I mean, I think in terms of percentage by way of letter grade. So, A is like 93 and up to 100, A minus like 90, 92, B plus 87, something like that. Okay, so I think in terms of letter grade. And then I assign a corresponding percentage that translates into points. That's just my thought. So on the final paper, let's say that, let's say part number 1, you scored like 78 percentile, right, which is like a C plus. If you score 88 or 90 percentile on the final paper, I'll raise the points on the first part to correspond to the percentage that is attached to the points on the second part. Okay, I want to make that clear. I'm not going to raise the points like if because part 2 is not worth the same as part 1. Okay. So I don't, somebody else just said, well, I did this once one semester. Somebody said, well, hey, I thought you said you were going to raise the points. I'm like, yeah. So the entirety of the paper, that is part 2 plus part 1, is worth 310 points. Okay. So, but that doesn't mean that I change the value of the 200 points that was assigned to part 2. So you could get 300 points on part 1, but if, and that would be something like 93 percentile. That doesn't mean you're going to get 300 points from part 2. You understand? From part to part 1, you get 300 points on the final paper, but that doesn't mean you're going to get 300 points on part 1. You understand? It's a percentage. Okay. So work at improving with the feedback that you got from the first part to incorporate that into your final paper. And, with your score going up, your score goes up on the first round on part 1, just retroactively. Just put that in there. All right. So it's a win-win for you, but you've got to have it in by the 8th of December. All right. Secondly, some of you have asked me about the final exam. You say, hey, I'm a little nervous about this. How do I prepare? I'm not sure what I'm doing, so on and so forth. Okay. So I will reiterate, the way to prepare for the final exam is to look at the discussion questions. And, week by week, when I go over the questions, I say, okay, this is really the nub of the question. This is what we're getting at here. And if I were to ask you about this on the final exam, it would probably be something like, right, and I put that in there. All right. Just go through the discussion questions. If there's a question about a theory or what somebody thought concerning, say, bloggers and the effects on despotic power. Much of this exam is going to be, tell me why it is you think this. All right, I'll give you space to write out your answers. There'll be some multiple choice. There'll be some true or false. Okay. And I'm not going to make too much of it essay because I don't want to, keep you in an exam for hours and hours. All right. But the way to prepare for it is go through the discussion questions. I'm toying with the idea of a review sheet. I don't like them because what I found in the past is when I give a review sheet, then what people do is they memorize the stuff on the sheet. And some people write answers onto the sheet and then either in printed out or electronic form refer to those answers during the test. And look, it's part of the online environment. Anytime you have a keyboard anywhere near you and you're, engaging with it, something is watching you. I mean, if you think what you're doing is private, you should really rethink that, because even the internet service provider is aware of your keystrokes. Right. And then, every time you go to these websites and it's like click cookies, they're tracking where you're going and what you're doing. That's one of the functions of cookies. All right. So it's the same with Canvas. And if you're on there and you're referencing other materials, Canvas is watching you, and then they send a report to me, and then I have to have a very uncomfortable conversation. I don't like uncomfortable conversations. Okay, is everybody following my drift? So I will think about it. Right, somebody asked me if I would do that, and normally the answer is no, but I'll think about it and let me get back to you. But the way to prepare for that test is study the discussion material. Now, it's due on the 13th. This is December we're talking about here. I typically like to make it available earlier. All right. Because, weirdly enough, the semester is like finished, put over by the 13th. So I may very well make the exam available, say on the 10th or the 11th of December, and give you those, 48 hours to take the exam and get it all in and get it done and get it finished. Okay. Rather than, because technically Saturday, which is the 13th, things are done, they're finished. Have it all wrapped up and buttoned up because, and this is good news, the end of the semester is December 12th, 13th, which is what? 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks away. Okay, that's not bad. Okay, so what are we going to do here today? Right now, we are going to take a look at our new book. Here, I'm reaching for said book that you started last week in week 12. Okay, I like this book. I'll tell you why in the course of our discussion. Okay, and so what I'll do for this video right now, I'm going to go through the questions from week 12, and then mañana, tomorrow, Friday, I'll go through the the material that we go back to, week 13. Okay. So then we'll be caught up in terms of what we review. And right now you're, working on those questions. I guess I really don't have to talk about them because I don't want to give it away, but, we'll cover those and you'll have everything that you need to know about what it is from the questions that's essential for you to focus on. Okay. All right. So I guess, yeah, we won't do week 13. We'll do week 11. So we'll work our way back. Okay. Because we didn't talk about week 11, but we'll do week 12 today and then week 11 tomorrow. Okay. Question number 1. What is the shift that changed local fundraising forever? And this is an interesting topic. We get caught in our, I don't like this phrase, but I'm going to use it here, in our politically correct, maybe I should say our politically channeled assumptions about discussion. So we have this tendency in the West, and it's extremely presumptuous, and beware of this tendency when you're out in the marketplace. We have this tendency to think because it's something new that we hadn't done before, it's better, and what we're doing now is better than what we did before, and what we'll do next is better than what we're doing now. That as a proposition is false. All right, it's false. Okay. And that's what this question is getting at. What was the shift that changed local fundraising forever? Do you see evidence of this in the place where you work or live? Please explain. Okay, Amber, you went last. Let's take you first. Nevin Moss explains that the biggest shift that changed local fundraising forever was the move from traditional methods of digital innovation-focused fundraising. Instead of depending on events or face-to-face asks, nonprofits now use online platforms, social media, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, yes, that is true. Okay. But what is it that they say? What was it that changed face to face? Who was it that was doing a lot of the face to face fundraising? Okay. It's almost like, this is something like a third rail that you don't want to touch. All right. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I want you to dig into it a little bit. Let me give you a clue. All right, I'll just read it. Cynthia, let's take your answer because you hit the nail on the head. The shift that authors say changed local fundraising forever was women entering the workforce full-time in very large numbers. Yes, see, it's okay to talk about changes that lead to changes when whether it's a communication phenomenon or other thing, without implying somehow, but by the mere fact that you're discussing it, that we're advocating for a reversal. All right. The one doesn't equate to the other. So that was the change. Women entered the workforce in large numbers. Women were the driving force behind face-to-face fundraising. Women not only were the driving force behind face-to-face fundraising, women have traditionally been the driving force behind much of the not-for-profit sphere in this country. There's the idea that it should be there, and you know, I'm still not happy with my hat, and how it should operate. I mean, look, there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only so much juice in the emotional battery for anybody. So if you're managing relationships in the workplace, and you're managing relationships in the home, the bandwidth that you have left to manage relationships within the community goes down. And this impacted fundraising. Don't be afraid of what you think is, you know, some kind of a, do you understand what I mean when I say third rail? That expression means, you know, if it comes from subway systems, you have the two rails that the wheels of the subway go on, and then the third rail is typically sort of in the center of the two rails, and that's the rail through which the electricity runs, and there's a little connector on the train that touches it, and that helps the train go. And so they say if something is third rail, meaning, oh, don't even touch that. Because, you know, if you touch the rail where the electricity is, it's like zappy, and nothing good will happen to you. Okay, so topically, when we say, you know, that's third rail, that's what we mean. Okay, maybe that'll be a bonus question. All right, question number 2. This is from week 12. Neff and Moss argue that the big 3 methods of Lean, Six Sigma, and TQM, and lordy, do I have an aversion to this stuff, employed by for-profit companies are not the best way to promote innovation in not-for-profits. Why do they conclude this? Okay. Let's look at you, Sarah. In the future of nonprofits, Neff and Moss argue that traditional corporate methods like Lean, Six Sigma, et cetera, don't promote true innovation in not-for-profits because they focus too heavily on efficiency, control, and eliminating errors. Okay. What is that telling us about the not-for-profit sector? Okay, that they can stifle creativity. In other words, and you know, and this is fine. There are some, and that's a very good answer, by the way, Sarah. There are some processes out there that the heart of which is efficient repetition, production of stuff like this. You know, the phone, the portable, smartphone, computer, because it's computer and it's a music player and it's a camera and all that stuff. Okay. In order to produce this at scale and to bring the costs down to the consumer so you can have wide market distribution, you have to have a process that is repeatable, that is, you can do it over and over and over and over and over. B, as efficient as possible, so there is very little waste and repetition because that costs money. And then C, scalable, that you can do it over and over with very little waste on a large scale, so you can crank these things out all the day long. There are some processes that work well on that. There are other processes, like, say, the heart and soul of not-for-profit, because, you know, some of those processes that rely on human relations and connections. Those processes, here's a truism for you to ingest. I'm looking for another book that I have on interpersonal communication. I'm not seeing it right now, but here's a truism for you to ingest. It doesn't matter if you're working for a not-for-profit. Okay? If you're working as a comms director for some, you know, organization or individual, nobody likes to feel like they're being handled. Nobody likes to feel like they're being subject to an industrialized process. That is a turnoff, man, and flips the off switch. And therefore, in the not-for-profit sector, the types of training that work the best for the not-for-profit are types of trainings that encourage innovation and creativity, means by which we connect with other people. And that doesn't necessarily go well, which is nothing wrong with repetition, error elimination, and scalability. It's the difference between object and subject. in terms of the focus of the process. Okay, do you understand? All right, question number 3. Neff and Moss present innovation as a strategy for success. Do you agree or disagree that innovation makes a good strategy? Okay, let's see what you're saying. Emily, I would agree with their assertions as long as innovation is not the only strategy. I do think that the big 3 strategies mentioned in the last question provide some important consideration that encourages managers to be good stewards of the resources, time, and manpower. Okay. That being said, I like this part of your answer, Emily. I agree that innovation strategies are not widely pursued because their benefits are not immediately seen as profitable. That is true. Let me pause just a little bit to give you some feedback from the marketplace in which I work. Another reason. Let me put this gently. I can tell you another reason why innovation as a strategy is not widely pursued in the marketplace. If you want to know the reason for that, let me just put it this way. If you want to know the reason why innovation is not widely pursued, if you want to, look to find where would I find that answer? Look in the mirror. Companies and I work in the role of strategic communication for a large investor group, and I mean large by the capital that we have under our consideration. And my job is to go out and find projects that that the group invests in. Now we have 2 sides to the group. We have the for-profit side, and we have the not-for-profit side. But really, there's investors are the investors, and they want a return on their money. It's just which kind of return on that. On the for-profit side, they want a large financial return. On the not-for-profit side, they still want a financial return. They're willing to take a smaller financial return if that return is making a change that they're interested in. Okay, so precursors to what I'm going to do. I often work with students, graduate students, in internship roles. I'm just exhausted with saying, okay, this is, I'll find a project. They're the interns. I say, okay, this is your chicken. What are we going to do with it? We're going to keep it to lay eggs, or we're going to fry it up right now. What is it? Just, what do you think we should do? Is what they ask me. I'm like, hey, I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is your internship. One of the reasons that the practice of innovation is being used less and less, but it doesn't mean that it's not necessary. Is that people coming out into the marketplace are accustoming themselves to waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Take this to heart, and I'm not saying that this is anybody here, okay? But take this to heart, that when you finish here at Regent and you go out into the workforce, position yourself in terms of what you're thinking of what you're doing as the person with you're not going to have all of the answers, but with the answer by way of process to find out the answers. Don't get into a role. I mean, you're going to get some training and stuff like that, but don't get into a communication role, and then you turn to the organization and ask them, well, what do you want to say? Well, they're like, you're the one with all the letters after your name. What do you think we should say? Okay, that is strangling the willingness of organizations to use innovation, because they don't have time to wait around. And okay, pay close attention to the disruption of the application of artificial intelligence in our business of strategic communication. The less and less that people are able to respond in a way that serves the need of an organization, the more and more, organizations are going to turn to automated processes. It's just a cost-benefit analysis. And you might say, oh, it's not fair. It's the marketplace. It's not supposed to be fair. It just is what it is. Okay. Question number 4. According to Neff and Moss, which drives which? Innovation or technology? Okay, the perennial question. Okay. James, according to Neff and Moss, innovation and technology work best when they work together so they drive each other. Correct. Now, see, that might, I might give you that. That might be like in a true or false. According to the authors, I'm not saying that is it. Okay, but it's the old chicken and the egg question. Okay, the two work best when one is pushing the other. And by way of communication studies and innovation, this is the hotly debated question. It's sort of like, is art imitating life or does life imitate art? Okay, good question. Don't know that we're going to have a definitive answer. All right, and that's okay. Okay. Now I know, okay, I'm sort of working backwards because week 11, I gave you the first questions from the book. I'll cover those tomorrow. Okay, but in the meantime, between now and the remainder of the week, and as we move into the last weeks of the semester, and as you're working now through week 13, okay, get those papers squared away and in good shape, because the 8th of December, and although technically we still have class, you want to take some time during Thanksgiving break to be with family. All right, so those papers are in good shape because I don't have the bandwidth for late papers following the 8th of December. So if you have any questions, be sure to email me, okay? And in terms of, is there a rubric? Yes, look in the assignments folder. You'll see it, all right? And then start going back and studying the discussion questions in preparation for the exam. I'll think about a study sheet, and then, I'll give you a decision tomorrow when I post the next video covering the questions from week 11. Okay, everybody, it's great to be back. I hope that you're doing well. Hang in there. You're doing great. I think about you. I pray about you, and I will see you on Blackboard. Listen to me. I'll see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.